Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. You have made me so very happy, giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Oh, dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Oh, happy you have made me, giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. Oh baby. Yes. I remember the day I met you. An everlasting dream came true. When I heard you in my arms, I found love. Love can do no harm. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. You're the nearest to my heart. Girl, we'll never part. I got to have a girl by my side, yeah. Oh, I feel love. Love calm down. I feel love. Love calm down, 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 down.
Dennis?
Yes, sir. Testing 1, 2.
And here we go. Oh, wait, just a second. Stephanie, can you put your jacket, please?
Did who?
Dr. Dolo.
Why? What happened?
Oh, the green on her shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're showing up professionally.
Doc, Dr. T. Why you so serious? Yes.
On two. 1, 2, we live.
Good evening and welcome to Focus on Liberia, a weekly show highlighting issues about Liberia and Liberians. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing corruption in Liberia and the work of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. Corruption is a very tough issue in Liberia. Starting from 1980, after the coup d'etat of 1980, we had people that were executed due to rampant corruption. Then came the era of Doe, when people were put on posts and beaten because of corruption. We also saw later on that corruption became a very, very debated topic in Liberia. Later, during the first presidency of the current president, Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she declared corruption #1 public enemy. So with me tonight to discuss corruption and its impact on the Liberian society and what can be done to change that, I have a commissioner from the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission, Mrs. Abba Hamilton-Dolo. Mrs. Dolo, welcome.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dolo is a commissioner of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. She serves as the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention. She also serves as a consultant to several organizations, including the Rabat International Airport, where she performed an audit of the airport's human resource development. She also served as one of the 2 consultants who administered the famous 2013 University of Liberia entrance that had 98% failure rate. Also with me to discuss corruption, we have a political commentator and author, Mr. Tewroh-Wehtoe Sungbeh. Mr. Sungbeh, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Sungbeh is an author. He's published the political commentary and reflections on Liberia. He's also the editor and publisher of the Liberian Dialogue. That's an online magazine. Mr. Sungbeh also published the Liberian Democracy Ambush, How Liberian Presidents and the Educated Elites Plunged Liberia into Dictatorship, Poverty, War, and Underdevelopment. Mr. Sungbeh, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well.
Thank you. And Mrs. Dolo, welcome from Liberia.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin by just telling us a little bit about the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and your role on that commission.
Good afternoon again. My name is Abba Hamilton-Dolo. I'm the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention at the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. It is a pleasure to be on this platform this afternoon. I want to state for the records that I am not here on mission for the Anti-Corruption Commission. I'm here visiting family members, but I just had the opportunity to speak to the issues, so I'm here in my personal capacity. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that disclaimer. And so let's go right into it. What is LACC and what are you doing on that commission?
LACC is the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. It's a commission that was enacted by the Act of Legislation in 2008. And the commission has the mandate to prevent issues of corruption, investigate, prosecute, and educate the public about the vices as it pertains to corruption.
Corruption indeed is a big topic, and all over the Liberian news media you hear about corruption. Mr. Sungbeh, let me bring you in on corruption. Corruption in Liberia, you write extensively issues regarding corruption. You have covered this topic a lot. What do you know about corruption in Liberia, and what work have you been doing as a political commentator to both cover this and to report on it?
Thank you for asking me. I've covered it extensively, like you said. Corruption is something that has affected the Liberian people for so much time, so long. I think if you can remember, and I can remember, and Mr. Dolo can remember, President Tewroh instituted a corruption bureau back in the 70s to fight corruption. That's how bad it was at that time. And that policy didn't do anything about corruption. In 2008, the legislature went and created the LACC. And since then, because of political interference, the lack of funding, and all that has hampered corruption, the fight to curb corruption. So we have problems with corruption throughout. In 2006, in fact, President Salif told the Liberian people that corruption was systemic and endemic in the Liberian society. As a result, she with the legislature, they went and put together this LACC commission. And since then, we don't know what has happened. In fact, I have, let me look before I make a mistake on this. Data from the LACC, in fact, their own website states number of cases investigated, 9. That was in between November 2013.
And we'll get to that shortly, okay. Mr. Sungbeh. I just want us to start from the basics. Okay. You see, Transparency International defines corruption as an abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Yeah. I want us to start from the basics, Mrs. Dolo. As per the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, what is corruption?
So corruption, for the intent of this discussion, will look at the official definition of corruption as it's enacted in the act that created the commission. It is the misuse of public power or your office for personal gains. So that's, in essence, in a nutshell, that's what corruption is. If you look back at corruption, again, in the layman's language, is anything stealing, cheating, any of those kinds of acts that we all know that will not benefit the greater good for the greater amount of people, but people for a personal gain.
And so when the commission was set up, it was given this broad mandate to implement, to investigate, and do all that. So just walk us through the work that the commission, just as a summary, the work that the commission has been doing as regards what it was mandated to do.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to talk about the organizational structure of the commission. So the commission has 4 thematic areas. First of all, it's headed by a body of commissioners, 5 commissioners, one who serves as an executive chairperson, the other one as the vice chairperson, and the other 3 commissioners have oversight roles over administration, education, and then we have enforcement, which has now been broken up to enforcement and legal. So those are the divisions. So the administration division actually handles the day-to-day administrations of the commission. The enforcement division now broken down to enforcement and legal. So enforcement will be the ones that go and do investigations, and then the legal division will be the one that takes care of the legal matters as it relates to court cases. Education and prevention, which I head, we are responsible for the prevention and education programs. So in a nutshell, that's what you have at the LSCC as it relates to the structure. What have we been doing? Let's step back. My colleague on the platform said that, you know, he listed understandably his frustration. I heard in his tone of voice that much has not been done. I beg to differ by the virtue of the fact that we have a commission in Liberia that was enacted by law and is supported by the Liberian government, that in and of itself is a big step in the right direction. If you look back to the current data that we've had, I left home about 2-3 weeks ago, and back then, over the past year, we had investigated 45 cases. So not every case that comes to the commission goes for trial, because what happens is that when a case comes, then the investigators have to go in and see if there is a merit of corruption, because don't forget that corruption has a specific framework. So for example, if somebody was on the street, or say you had a contract with somebody who did not perform, we have those cases come into us. But that is not a corruption case. If somebody is indebted to you, that is not a corruption case. So then we have to go through the cases and see which one are corruption based, and then we start investigating those ones. So when I talk about 45 cases, it will include just general cases that have come into the commission. And for education and prevention, we have established integrity clubs in schools. We realize that in order to fight corruption, we have to go down to the lower level. So we started at the elementary school level. We have integrity clubs in school. We have engagement with the market people, the pimping people, just that kind of awareness. And we're also working with government agencies and ministries, looking at system reviews to see where we have lapses as it relates to vulnerability to corruption.
That's beautiful, nicely said. So what is the, are you winning? What is your success? I know you're having some challenges and also some successes. What will you speak to those?
I want to say unequivocally that in my opinion, and I maintain that the winning of the victory is in the fight itself. If you look at the history of our country, corruption did not begin in Liberia in 1980 or during Tewroh-Wehtoe time. It's an age-old problem from the inception of the country. So the fact that we have a commission that is established to address that corruption, the fact that we are doing something about corruption, in my opinion, that is a fact that we are winning the fight, because the victory is in the fight. As I put in the write-up that I gave to you, corruption is not a war like, the conventional war where it's like a project that has a start time and an end time. Corruption, as long as human nature is deviant, will be ongoing. So it will not be at any given time that you can say that we have won the war on corruption, but it's in that continuous fight where we begin to change attitude and people begin to know that public space is not a place where you go to enrich yourself, but where you go to serve, and we have consequences for the decisions that we make.
Mr. Sungbeh, I know you want to come in on that as one of regards success. What the commissioner is saying is by virtue of even having this corruption commission set up, that in itself is a big deal, and it's victory within itself, and the victory is within the fight. Do you have any different opinion?
I have a different opinion to that. In 2017, the Human Rights Watch in 2017 noted that the LACC has secured only two convictions. Only two convictions. So if you are this big-time organization, to have only two convictions, I mean, it's troubling. Like I said earlier, we had this corruption bureau in the 70s with President Tewroh, and because of the failure to doing its job, that bureau went away. Now we have in the LACC. Now, let me look at this thing before I can see what I have to say. Data analysis of the cases since November 2013 through 2016, August 31, 2016, courtesy of the LIBERIAN LACC. Number of cases investigated 9. Number of cases recommended for prosecution 8. Number of cases prosecuted 2. Number of cases concluded verdict rendered 2. The number of cases investigated and cleared 1. Okay, between 2013 November and 2016 August, number of cases investigated 13. Number of cases recommended for prosecution 9. Number of cases prosecuted 5. Number of cases concluded verdict rendered 2. Number of cases investigated and closed 4. So this shows that the LACC is having a serious problem. serious problem coming to terms with its own mandate of fighting corruption.
Why you think is that?
Why does he say that?
Yeah, why you think is that?
Political interference from the president. Okay? Lack of funding. Lack of funding. All those things have hampered the LACC. I would wish that my sister here will. I know she's not here representing the government, but if we are talking about corruption, we are saying that LACC has failed.
Okay. That's a big charge. Let me bring in your Mrs. Dolo.
Okay. Like again, I understand your concern, sir, and rightly so. We at the LACC are equally challenged. We sometimes get frustrated, but we do not throw our hands up. Let's look at what it takes in the environment of the corruption fights. Let's look at the laws that created the LACC. You know, people see the cosmetics, but the real substance of the issues are things that only people inside know. Let's look at the LACC, the law that created the LACC. The law says that the LACC gets a case, for example. If we investigate the case, in the cases that you're referring to, like I said, my 45 cases will include those cases that did not have the merit of corruption, that were actually thrown up before even they went into full investigation. That also takes time. So the law says LACC gets a case, LACC investigates the case. If there is merit in that case, LACC has to send that case to the Justice Ministry. The Justice Ministry has 90 days to decide whether to take the case to court or not. It would interest you to know that within 90 days, that is a long period of time, witnesses' memories fail, witnesses disappear, a lot of things happen. Moreover, even if we have cases that we take to court, the LACC is another branch of government. We're not responsible for what happened in the judicial branch. So if you had, we go to the same criminal code C with all the other criminals, say for example, those people who jacked someone pocketbook, people who stole phones, armed robbers, we all go to criminal code C. There is nothing in the law that says because it's a corruption case, that case needs to be expedited. So if we were number 98 on the docket, we wait until we reach to 98 before our case is adjudicated. I'm not saying that to minimize what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Yes, we also recognize the fact, like you mentioned, that we have challenges and we can do better. But for us to say that we have failed, we have not done anything, I think that is an understatement. Because like I said, you will tell me better because you've lived in, when it comes to age-wise, you've seen that in the past that corruption went with impunity. Other regimes, I was a child, but I know in certain regimes, you dare not even talk about corruption. If you're in Liberia, you have the airway free. People can call and talk about corruption. People can call. When in the history of Liberia has a sitting Speaker of the House of Representatives been indicted? When in the history of Liberia has a sitting chairman of the ruling party been indicted? We have to celebrate the little milestones. Yes, it is not enough. Yes, we're not saying that much is not to be desired, but for us to say nothing is being done and we've lost the fight, I disagree. Not because I work at the LACC, but because the facts are there. And let's go back a little bit. Right, let me just lay my thought, please. Okay. If you look at an organization, for an organization that was established in 2008, like any other organization, you're in your initial 3 years or 4 years thereof, you're building the internal structures of your organization. Then it's after that side that, which is the stage that we're just going into that phase, that now you start to go out and measure your successes and your failures. And we do take note and we do appreciate people like you who are critics, because we need that to keep that on our toes. But I just wanted to bring clarity to that. Thank you. So, Madam Commissioner, I hear you say that even though you are doing this, but there's an issue with the judicial system. Is that what I'm hearing you say, that the process is taking too long because you go through the same judicial process to prosecute these people? So of the corruption cases that you have investigated, even if you send those to court, they just lying there, there's nothing being done.
about those kind of cases?
And I wouldn't say there is nothing being done about those kinds of cases. What we're saying, because of the way it is set up, those cases are slow to get on the docket.
Are you frustrated about that?
Absolutely, and that's why we've been advocating that we need a financial crimes court. So give the financial crime court and give us the money that we need, the resources that we need to be able to do the work. I'll give you an example, and that's not just the LACC, all government institutions. As a matter of fact, if your budget, 85% of your budget is used on personnel, what do you have for programs?
Yeah, that brings me in with what I was saying about the failure of the LACC. If you're talking about you are indicting people, but their properties are not being confiscated, they are not being thrown in jail, nothing has happened to them. They are fleeing out of the country because a lot of them own homes and American green card and citizenships in America. They come here and just live lavishly or live their lives freely while the people over there suffering. So we are saying that indictment alone is not it. When you throw into jail, okay, the Afrobarometer.
Mr. Sungbeh, before you continue.
Before I lose my thought. Okay, the Afrobarometer, a Pan-African research group, did a research on 35 African countries, and they concluded that in Liberia, our officials, 88% of Liberian officials are corrupt. 88%. Okay? These people are so corrupt that it has affected the living standard of the people because they are stealing a whole lot. So if the LACC is just indicting these people and they are not being thrown into jail to put some fear in them or their property confiscated, it is meaningless.
What I wanted to tell you, what is that's not their role, as what she's saying.
Thank you.
Because that's not their role.
Therefore, they are the face. LACC is the face of LACC.
So in that case, what do you expect LACC to do when they convict people, or people are found when they indict people,
indictment
and these
conviction.
people are sent to court? What else do you want LACC to do in that regards?
Oh, LACC has to work with the Justice Ministry.
But
work with the Justice Ministry. Look at how does it benefit me if you put me in a place to work for you and I'm doing my work and you're not doing your part? But it's showing that I'm there. I'm not going to be a cover for your misdeeds. I'm not.
No, Mr. Samuel, let's get something clear, please. LACC does not have the right or the legal whatever framework to convict or even indict.
Okay.
All the LACC does is to investigate cases. It is the judicial branch of government which has the mandate to indict people and to convict them. You're talking about people who have taken, while we are not confiscating, it goes to the weak laws. That's the problem. That's the crust of the problem. The very laws that are enacted to fight corruption, those laws are inadequate. So, say for example, if you have our law says that a person cannot self-indict. Okay, you cannot indict yourself. So the person cannot give you evidence. We need laws like in other countries where you have lifestyle audits. Okay, where if I see you with this book, then you need to come and tell me how you got that book. Under the laws of Liberia, the accuser has the burden of proof to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So even if we see a person who is sweeping the street and has a mansion, and you know by no stretch of the imagination can that person afford that, but there are no laws for you to go after that person. So those are some of the things that we need to look at. And before I just close on this last thought, I heard you say several times that interference from the president. I want to state unequivocally for the record that as I know, as long as I've been at the Anti-Corruption Commission for 3 years, at no time do I know that the president has actually called on any member of the body of commissioners to say you can do this or not do that. Talking about the 188%, it's called perception index. So that is the perception is not something that is rooted in hardcore facts that you can say somebody did a research and say that you can prove the 88% corruption rate within government. Not to minimize the point that you've just made. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you are just joining us, you are watching Focus on Liberia. And we are discussing corruption and the Anti-Corruption Commission in Liberia. When we will be taking a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the causes of corruption what causes corruption in Liberia? What are some of the root causes? And
Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. You have made me so very happy. Giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Oh, dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Oh, oh, happy you have made me, giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love comes down when you're touching me. Oh, baby. Yes. I remember the day I met you. An everlasting dream came true. When I held you in my arms, I found love can do no harm. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. You're the nearest to my heart. Girl, we'll never part. I got to have a girl by my side, yeah. Oh, I feel love. Love calm down. I feel love. Love calm down, 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 down.
Dennis?
yes, sir. Testing 1, 2.
And here we go. Oh, wait just a second. put your jacket, please? Dr. Dolo.
What happened?
You got the background.
Oh, the green on her shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're showing up professionally.
Doc, Dr. T. Why you so serious? Yes.
On two. 1, 2, live.
Good evening and welcome to Focus on Liberia, a weekly show highlighting issues about Liberia and Liberians. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing corruption in Liberia and the work of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. Corruption is a very tough issue in Liberia. Starting from 1980, after the coup d'etat of 1980, we had people that were executed due to rampant corruption. Then came the era of Doe, when people were put on posts and beaten because of corruption. We also saw later on that corruption became a very, very debated topic in Liberia. Later, during the first presidency of the current president, Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she declared corruption #1 public enemy. So with me tonight to discuss corruption and its impact on the Liberian society and what can be done to change that, I have a commissioner from the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission, Mrs. Abba Hamilton-Dolo. Mrs. Dolo, welcome.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dolo is a commissioner of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. She serves as the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention. She also serves as a consultant to several organizations, including the Roberts International Airport, where she performed an audit of the airport's human resource development. She also served as one of the 2 consultants who administered the famous 2013 University of Liberia entrance that had 98% failure rate. Also with me to discuss corruption, we have a political commentator and author, Mr. Tewroh-Wehtoe Sungbeh. Mr. Sungbeh, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Sungbeh is an author. He's published the political commentary and reflections on Liberia. He's also the editor and publisher of the Liberian Dialogue, that's an online magazine. Mr. Sungbeh also published the Liberian Democracy Ambush, How Liberian Presidents and the Educated Elites Plunged Liberia into Dictatorship, Poverty, War, and Underdevelopment. Mr. Sungbeh, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well.
Thank you. And Mrs. Dolo, welcome from Liberia.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin by just telling us a little bit about the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and your role on that commission.
Good afternoon again. My name is Abba Hamilton-Dolo. I'm the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention at the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. It is a pleasure to be on this platform this afternoon. I want to state for the records that I am not here on mission for the Anti-Corruption Commission. I'm here visiting family members, but I just had the opportunity to speak to the issues, so I'm here in my personal capacity. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. And then we'll discuss the root causes.
The most common, the most pervasive form of corruption in Liberia is bribery. So we all know what bribery means, that a service that is supposed to be provided, we give that in exchange for personal, whether it's money, it's favor, or whatever it is. So bribery, we have nepotism, where you have family members, people hiring their family members. We also have kickback, that is another common form of corruption in Liberia.
So what are some of the root causes of corruption?
In my personal opinion, and looking at other scientific data, you will see that our culture, we cannot talk about corruption in Liberia without looking at our culture. We have a culture of impunity ingrained within our culture. I gave an example. If something went wrong, let's even look at the village level. If something went wrong and you had a case, we called the elders together, we went under the palaver hut and we talked the case. No matter what bad that person did, the end result was that, okay, let bygone be bygone, forgive and forget, let's do it, we live together. So that is a part of our culture. We are not used to penalizing people for things that they do wrong. So that culture of impunity is rooted in the Liberian circuit. If you look on the other side to the impunity, if we start to penalize people for what they do, and people get justly penalized for the crimes that they commit, we will see the reduction in the form of corruption. But like I said again, if somebody works in the office and you want to take action, you find everybody coming to you, talking to you, oh, the person has a family, and we all do it, we're all guilty. So that would be a good place to start. And we cannot discredit also that the war has had a serious devastating effect on our social circuit as Liberians. Things that people were ashamed of before, after the war, those things have become commonplace. Now, evil seems to be good and good seems to be evil. So we have to look at all those different dichotomies when we talk about the root causes of corruption.
All right, you mentioned impunity and the culture. To me, I see that as reacting, because if after somebody has committed corruption or an act of corruption, what do? But even before that happens, okay, and Mr. Sungbeh, I can bring you in on that as well. Before that happened, before we talk about the punishment, what really is driving people? I remember when Mrs. Salif took office, one of the reasons people were getting paid, lavishly, for the lack of a better word, was if people have enough money, they're not going to steal. So, Mr. Sungbeh, do you have other suggestions on what really causing corruption?
Yeah, when people are not being paid, you're going to turn somewhere else to get money. In Liberia today, the cost of living there, the minimum wage there is $6 per day. $6 can you believe that? $6 a day. The global poverty index is $1.90. And when people are being paid $1 a day, they're going to end up going to steal.
But Mr. Sungbeh, the people that are stealing are rich people.
Thank you.
These people make millions, if thousands.
Corruption is not limited to rich and poor people.
No, I
people
mean,
want to get what they can get.
No, I mean it's not with poverty, right?
Okay, so no.
They want to get over.
So let's make the point.
So unemployment in Liberia today is 85%. So 85% coupled with people being paid $6 per day, and they don't have the attitude, the attitude to do what is right. They're gonna go and do the wrong thing to get over. So how do you get rid of corruption? By having an attitude change, making people get enough money to take care of their family. If you cannot send your kid to school because you don't have the money, if you cannot find food to put on the table because you don't have the money, of course you're gonna do something bad. The rich people that are stealing, if you got money, you want to get more money. That's it. You want to get more money. And the poor people, they want to get a little bit they can get to get over with.
Okay, so then that brings us back to the fact of the matter that yes, salaries could be a factor, but that is not the crust of the matter. The crust of the matter is what you grow up with, a person's value system. I know very poor people who will not steal because of their value system. I know very rich people who will steal because they do not have that kind of value. So when we talk about corruption, to just narrow it down so that people are not being paid now more than ever before, People in public service are making far more money than we ever imagined in our lifetime. So, but again, take me for example. Growing up as a child in my father's house, my father taught me about integrity. And as later as 3 years, I remember him teaching me something that I did not know the meaning at that time, but I knew that whenever he took me out, it was fun because people gave me candies and I got 10 cents. And it was, we are the Hamiltons. We are noble and great. We never learn to lie. We never learn to steal. Therefore, before I lie or steal, I prefer to die. And this is my family oath. I learned that at age 3. So somebody took the time when I was a child to inoculate me with the issue of integrity. That's why I can say no matter how long I still in government, no matter what the statistics says, I will know one day that I can walk out of government and put my hands up and say, I did not steal because of the value system that I ascribe to. So corruption has nothing to do, income, that's more tempting, but there's something more, innate than that.
Right, and that's a great point on the value system, because that values is all about value, and so that's why you being the education prevention, you spoke about doing something to the school level, because you inoculate, if I may use your word, those values early in life. Mr. Sungbeh, they say in Liberia, they say the tail of a grown, when the dog is grown, you can no longer bend the tail. So values at that age play a role. Will you agree?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's go back. And one thing that from my reading is the root cause is the lack of accountability and discretion.
Thank you.
Because people, let's say I'm a police officer, if I have to use my own discretion, whoever comes to me is based on my discretion. How can you address that issue of discretion? People having broad discretion to do whatever they want to do.
That's a good point, because when we look at corruption, we have two sets of corruption. You have grand corruption and petty corruption. So the petty corruption is the administrative corruption, the one you see the police do, you see the ones in the offices, those are administrative corruption. So it's the day-to-day petty corruption. Then you have grand corruption, the ones that takes place at that level where you have contracts, the Sabo mining case and those kinds of things. Those ones are grand corruption. But again, when we look at corruption and we look at the causes of corruption, corruption has a triangle. You have opportunity, you have pressure, and then you have rationalization. So like you said, when people have too much discretionary powers, that is not good, because that in and of itself lacks check and balance. So once you have that discretion and then you have the opportunity, then you begin to rationalize. For example, I hear a lot of people in Liberia say, for example, the lawmakers say, people come to us, they ask us, the kids are going to school, we have to pay school fees, we have to change people roofs and all those things. And so you rationalize why you need to do that. So you have the pressure to do that. The other thing is, let's look at us as Liberians. A person who works in government, when you come out of government, the expectation is that you must have taken something in government. So if you see an honest person who was an ex-minister, for example, and he doesn't have a car, the first thing we say, oh, that man was stupid man. They may do nothing for himself. That expectation is there. So we cannot divorce ourselves that even we as ordinary Liberians will also contribute to corruption. So if you have that mindset about somebody else in government, then you imagine a person going, and so that's the pressure, and the person cannot rationalize, I have to put roof on people, I have to pay school fees, and so I needed to do what I did. But again, like you say, curbing that kind of excessive power, curbing that discretionary power goes a far way, and that's where check and balances come in play.
If you are watching us and you want to be part of the discussion, please call 404-300-3925. Again, 404-300-3925. Or you can post your comments on Facebook. After 1 minute, we'll call Stephanie to see what we got on Facebook. But Mr. Sungbeh, we talk about culture. And in Liberia, we have saying, they say, even our proverbs tend to kind of promote some form of corruption. Like you say, where you tie goat, there where the goat will eat. You cannot play with oil without oil leaving on your fingers. These are all saying that promotes corruption. culture-wise, what can we do to kind of stop that mindset that people need to be corrupt when they have been entrusted with something?
It's the same thing, instilling values in people from early age, like you said. I mean, nothing else you can do with kids coming up. You teach them the proper way to live their life as adults. If you don't do it, they're going to end up being corrupt like their forefathers. And we have had this problem in Liberia, like the president said, it is systemic and endemic in the society. So as a problem that has been lingering for so long, there has to be a way to instill values, attitude change in people, so they can know that something that is not belonging to them, that does not belong to them, cannot be taken away because they want to satisfy some goals of theirs. So that's the only thing I can say about it.
And again, the key in the fight against corruption is education. It is education that brings about mindset change and attitudinal change. But the moment you ask, even for Liberians, when you ask, so what are the successes, the first thing they tell you, how many cases have you taken to court? That is not the solution to the problem. Why there will be people who, no matter how good, we have an equation in the corruption fights that you have 80% of people who at any given time will do the right thing. You have another 10% who at any given time will do the wrong thing. You have another 10% who at any given time may go either way.
Let me ask you a question.
Right.
Why do you think they have such an expectation?
Because that's how we're trained to think about things, that we only think in a punitive manner. But like he said, prevention is key to the fight against corruption. If you can stop it, then we don't even have to go to that level. But we as a people have not appreciated the prevention and education aspect of the fight against corruption.
I think it's all about frustration in the society. Maybe you see folks cannot even afford to send their kids to school, or when you see a mother cannot put food on the table, all that brings about frustration. So if you can find people being sent to prison, or you think LACC not doing their job, people get frustrated. So I don't think it should be a problem on there. It should be a problem on the government, because people, their expectation level is high. You see? That's all I can say.
So before we go to our Facebook, Mrs. Dolo, how do you measure now the success of the LACC? Are you successful? And if yes, you know, how you measure that, and what do you have to show for it?
If we look back, even using Mr. Sungbeh's data that he had, if you look back, LACC will be 9 years old. Prior to that time, what did we have? Nothing. So 9 years later, we have an institution that, it's my hope, is here to stay. We have cases that we're working on. We have engagement with the public. We have the attacking corruption where it should be in the minds of people. We have the integrity clubs. We have various programs that are ongoing. So we can say that we have been successful as a people.
Thank you so much. One thing I read, there was an article that I read, was written I think last year. They talk about, they say LACC should be eradicated because they are doing nothing. And what the author look at it, say in 2008, 15 million was spent on the LACC, and then with only 2 cases. So you speak to the money part of the LACC. So in his argument was, if you can have 15 million and out of 15 million you have 2 convictions, then we need to put that money somewhere else.
Well, that's the unfortunate thing about people having access to Facebook, whereas where social media is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because anybody can just write any thing and put it out there. LACC budget has never been up to 3 million. So what is the national budget? What will the budget for the entire justice system be? It's not even up to 50 million. So how can LACC by itself get 50 million? So that is bogus. I agree that LACC needs to do more, absolutely. That where we are is not what we want to be, but to say that to close the institution, that's just for people who do not want to see the fight go forward.
I would not want to see the LACC be abolished. demolished. I wouldn't want to see it be gone. If anything, I want it to be beefed
More
up. Yeah, put
robust.
some money in it,
Right.
put some power behind it, and put some teeth behind it.
Thank you.
So you can do their job.
Right.
Because we Liberians, we have had, like I said previously, the frustration level is mounting. I mean, every Liberian website you go to or social platform you go to, they're discussing this thing religiously. Liberians are frustrated about corruption.
Mr. Sungbeh, may I
something
please?
has to be done.
We agree.
Before please hold that thought as we go to our Facebook.
Okay.
Our Facebook is being bombarded with people want to ask you some questions. So let's get our Facebook. For that, we go to Stephanie.
Okay, we have the first question is from Dave Ja, and he wants to know two questions, sorry. Where does the funding of the LACC come from? And the second question is, what life experiences influence your desire to serve on the commission?
That's for
Okay,
you,
I
Mrs.
guess
Dolo.
yes, that's for me. Dave, thanks for the interaction. The first question, what influenced my life? I already alluded to that earlier. My father was a role model to me and growing up as a child, and I've always advocated for the disadvantaged, and I've always stood up against injustices. So it came to me as a natural thing. I did not have a desire to work at the LACC, but the opportunity presented itself, and I think it's a ministry that God made that intervention. I can put it that way. The LACC funding comes from the government of Liberia budget, and sometimes we do have fundings from donors, from like the World Bank supports us, UNDP and other international organizations, but our core budget is from the government of Liberia.
Thank you. Stephanie, we have any?
I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, so I don't want to chop it up too bad. Holopre de Con.
Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. You have made me so very happy. Giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Oh, dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Oh, oh, happy you have made me, giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love come down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love come down. Love comes down when you're touching me. Oh, baby. Yes. I remember the day I met you. I never hand, you in my arms. I found love, love can do no harm. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love come down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love come down. Love come down when you're touching me. You're the nearest to my heart. Girl, will never part. I got to have a girl by my side, yeah. Oh. I feel love. Love come down. I feel love. Love come down, 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 down.
Dennis?
Yes, sir. Testing 1, 2.
And here we go. Oh, wait, just a second. Stephanie, can you put your jacket, please? Dr. Dolo.
What happened?
You got the background.
Oh, the green on her shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're showing up professionally.
Dark. Dr. T. Why you so serious?
On,
Yes.
on 2. 1, 2, you live.
Good evening and welcome to Focus on Liberia, a weekly show highlighting issues about Liberia and Liberians. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing corruption in Liberia and the work of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. Corruption is a very tough issue in Liberia, starting from 1980. After the coup d'etat of 1980, we had people that were executed due to rampant corruption. Then came the era of Doe, when people were put on posts and beaten because of corruption. We also saw later on that corruption became a very, very debated topic in Liberia. Later, during the first presidency of the current president, Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she declared corruption #1 public enemy. So with me tonight to discuss corruption and its impact on the Liberian society and what can be done to change that, I have a commissioner from the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission, Mrs. Hamilton-Dolo. Mrs. Dolo, welcome.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dolo is a commissioner of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. She serves as the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention. She also served as a consultant to several organizations, including the Rabat International Airport, where she performed an audit of the airport's human resource development. She also served as one of the 2 consultants who administered the famous 2013 University of Liberia entrance that had 98% failure rate. Also with me to discuss corruption, we have a political commentator and author, Mr. Tewroh-Wehtoe Sungbeh. Mr. Sungbeh, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Sungbeh is an author. He's published the Political Commentary and Reflections on Liberia. He's also the editor and publisher of the Liberian Dialogue. That's an online magazine. Mr. Sungbeh also published the Liberian Democracy Ambush, How Liberian Presidents and the Educated Elites Plunged Liberia into Dictatorship, Poverty, War, and Underdevelopment. Mr. Sungbeh, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well.
Thank you. And Mrs. Dolo, welcome from Liberia.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin by just telling us a little bit about the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and your role on that commission.
Good afternoon again. My name is Hamilton-Dolo. I'm the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention at the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. It is a pleasure to be on this platform this afternoon. I want to state for the records that I am not here on mission for the Anti-Corruption Commission. I'm here visiting family members, but I just had the opportunity to speak to the issues, so I'm here in my personal capacity. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that disclaimer.
You're the nearest to my heart. Nearest. You're the dearest to my heart. Dearest. You're the nearest to my heart. Nearest. You're the dearest to my heart. Made me so very happy. Giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. Dearest, you're the nearest to my heart. Nearest, you're the dearest to my heart. You're the dearest to my heart. Oh, dearest. You're the nearest to my heart. Oh, happy you have made me, giving me the key to your heart. I'm gonna make you a solid promise that we will never part. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love calm down. Love comes down when you're touching me. Oh, baby. Yes. I remember the day I met you. An everlasting dream love when you're close to me. Love, calm down. Love, come down when you're touching me. I feel love. I feel love when you're close to me. Love, calm down. Love, come down when you're touching me. You're the nearest to my heart. World will never part. I got to have a girl by my side, love. Oh. I feel love. Love, calm down. I feel love. Love, calm down, 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 down.
Dennis,
Yes, sir. Testing 1, 2.
and here we go. Oh, I need just to see this. Stephen, can you put your jacket, please? Dr. Dolo.
What happened?
You got the background.
Oh, the green on her shirt.
yeah,
Yeah, you're showing up for questioning.
Dark. Dr. T. Why are you so serious?
On,
Yes.
on 2. 1, 2, live.
Good evening and welcome to Focus on Liberia, a weekly show highlighting issues about Liberia and Liberians. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing corruption in Liberia and the work of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. Corruption is a very tough issue in Liberia, starting from 1980. After the coup d'etat of 1980, we had people that were executed due to rampant corruption. Then came the era of Doe, when people were put on posts and beaten because of corruption. We also saw later on that corruption became a very, very debated topic in Liberia. Later, during the first presidency of the current president, Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she declared corruption #1 public enemy. So with me tonight to discuss corruption and its impact on the Liberian society and what can be done to change that, I have a commissioner from the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission, Mrs. Abba Hamilton-Dolo. Mrs. Dolo, welcome.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dolo is a commissioner of the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. She serves as the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention. She also serves as a consultant to several organizations, including the Roberts International Airport, where she performed an audit of the airport's human resource development. She also served as one of the 2 consultants who administered the famous 2013 University of Liberia entrance that had 98% failure rate. Also with me to discuss corruption, we have a political commentator and author, Mr. Tewroh-Wehtoe Sungbeh. Mr. Sungbeh, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Sungbeh is an author. He's published the political commentary and reflections on Liberia. He's also the editor and publisher of the Liberian Dialogue. That's an online magazine. Mr. Sungbeh also published the Liberian Democracy Ambush, How Liberian Presidents and the Educated Elites Plunged Liberia into Dictatorship, Poverty, War, and Underdevelopment. Mr. Sungbeh, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well.
Thank you. And Mrs. Dolo, welcome from Liberia.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin by just telling us a little bit about the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and your role on that commission.
Good afternoon again. My name is Hamilton-Dolo. I'm the Oversight Commissioner for Education and Prevention at the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. It is a pleasure to be on this platform this afternoon. I want to state for the records that I am not here on mission for the Anti-Corruption Commission. I'm here visiting family members, but I just had the opportunity to speak to the issues, so I'm here in my personal capacity. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that.
Say we have to stay within the confines of the law. I don't think it's our personality clashes of people refusing to cooperate, but I think we need to revisit our laws, because oftentimes the laws on the book conflict with each other, and that brings about some kind of artificial conflicts. But as it relates to personality, we get that support from the judiciary. The public, it's on and off. Like Mr. Sungbeh said, it depends on who you're going after at a particular time. If it's a person from Dennis's place, then I guess all the people from that side come against you. But we're getting there gradually. But generally, I will say that the public supports the work of the LACC. And we understand that they are impatient and they want more from us, and they have the right to request that from us.
In 2016, or 2006, during the President's State of the Union address, she said corruption was public enemy. Now, in the last State of the Union address, she said corruption is too entrenched in the society that it's just difficult to fight. If you hear the President almost throwing in the towel, what role is the LACC playing to give her back hope that we can actually fight and win this fight against corruption?
I don't think the President threw in the towel. I think she was just stating what the facts are. The fact is that it is difficult to fight corruption in Liberia. Don't forget, Liberia is 170 years old. The LACC is only 9 years old. So if you do the math, you will see that you've had 100+ years of having a bad disease. And all of a sudden you started treatment, you don't expect that disease to just, be cured in that one turn. I think that's what the President alluded to. And when we have the opportunity, I've made the point and said that the victory is in the fights against corruption. And I have no doubt in my mind it's a long and tedious journey, but the country will get there. And one day we as a people will be able to look at corruption and say, corruption, where is your victory? Corruption, where is your sting? Because Liberians will get to the place where we have systems in place. People in America are no different from people in Liberia, but because they have systems in place and those systems work, that's why corruption is minimized in America. And so we're beginning to build systems in Liberia. In due course, we'll get there.
And if you want to join us on that long and tedious journey of fighting corruption, please call in the studio. The number is 404-300-3925, or give us your comments, questions on Facebook. Mr. Sungbeh, let me bring you in.
Yeah. When you have a president who redefines nepotism, and she talks about wanting to curb corruption or eliminate corruption, then I have a problem with it. Nepotism is nepotism. When you take your family person and put that family person in government to benefit from government while you are president of a country, that's nepotism. Okay? It's corrupt. You can't say you're fighting corruption, but nepotism is not corruption. You cannot say you're fighting corruption, you take your son, you put him at the central bank, that nepotism, or your son at the NOCA or the National Oil Company, that nepotism. Then when they talk about when the organization goes bankrupt, you say you reorganizing and restructuring. Since then, we haven't even heard anything from anybody about what's going on there. So it starts, our people say fish starts getting rotten from the head, not from the tail. The president, this corruption thing starts from her. She as president has to set the tone to fight it, to eradicate, which is difficult to do, but you can curb it. You can curtail it, its impact. And this president has failed miserably.
All right. I know Mrs. Dolo want to come in, but we want to go to our callers. Caller, please call your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is Paul Bismarck. I'm calling from Cambridge, Boston. And I would like to make more like a statement than a call.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I think that Liberia will keep going through like a cycle for maybe the next century, a couple of centuries, until we have a generation. And when I say until we have a generation that's willing to sacrifice, if you look at every great nation or every great civilization, they had a generation. It becomes like part of us. It becomes like part of us. If you're not corrupt, then people won't find you to be like, nice or anything like that. Because, for example, Charles Tewroh had money that he didn't work for, all that, but people loved him. People gave him the presidency because of that. And we have all these leaders. So I don't think anything's going to change until we're waiting to start for not only in the government, but we as simple Liberians waiting to put everything aside, saying this generation is going to be the one that will sacrifice. We haven't had that generation in Liberia until we have a generation that's going to be waiting to sacrifice, the way my mom would say, tie your belt. Until we have that generation, we would keep going back and back and back. So the whole anti-corruption something would just be something that is, okay, she have an institution set up. And I'm not saying no disrespect to the institution of anti-corruption, but I'm just saying that it starts from creating programs and setting things in place that young people who try to go in government will be able to live up to that standard that you don't have to steal, because Liberia need to come first.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mrs. Dolo, Paul is saying we don't have that generation that is willing to tie his belt and say, we're going to do it.
Paul made some very salient points, but I want to challenge him. When no one thought that South Africa would be a free nation from apartheid, it took one person who stood up to the regime and took the regime on. Nobody thought when Martin Luther King was standing there and saying he had a dream, it takes one person to start. So I shot the challenge out to him, be that person who starts that generation.
Thank you. Mr. Sungbeh?
Corruption is a worldwide thing. It's a global thing. And even in this country in which we live, corruption is here, is rampant, is endemic. Like the President Salih would say, endemic, systematic. But they have institutions in place. Okay? They have institutions in place. We need institutions in Liberia. That's why I'm not supporting any of the presidential candidates. No, let me talk.
We'll leave that for another time.
Let me talk. That's why I'm not supporting any of them. Because you cannot go from putting these guys in power to be president, then they come back and repeat what the previous president did. It don't work for Liberia that way. You have to put in place, our institutions are broken. They're either broken or they're not there. So you have to put them in place. The next president gets there, follow the plan. If you want to build a house, then you follow plan. So corruption is everywhere. So you put in place the institutions that will combat corruption. You follow your own plans. You work those plans, and as a result, maybe you get results. That's why we get some results in this country.
Thank you so much, and I like that emphasis. At this time, we'll go to Ms. Stephanie for our Facebook.
Okay, we have a question from Isaac T. Setro. What is the level of coordination between LACC and General Auditing Commission in fighting corruption? That's to you, Mrs. Dolo.
Right. Well, we have a good LACC and the GSC have an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So a lot of our cases that we investigate come out from the GSC audits. So we do have a good framework for working relationships.
And I saw that even within the act that created the LACC, is like you are more or less reacting. You have to wait for people to bring you cases.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, state the facts.
The fact is that the LACC can initiate an investigation at any time. So sometimes our investigations even come from like news. We on the newspapers, in the newspapers, on air. Sometimes just calling in to radio shows and talking about particular topic or problem can initiate an investigation.
Thank you. Let's go back to Stephanie.
Okay, we have a question from Islam M. Abu, but Mr. Buffo clarified. You can place your son if he qualifies, but when he is stealing, you have to remove him. I guess that's in regards to the president's son.
All right.
You have already from a statement that I made. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to tell Liberians where you're not qualified or that, but you have to draw a line though. Who supervises your children if they are in power? You the president, you supervise your own child. Is there no other Liberian that has qualified to hold that position but your son, your family person? Put it out there in the civil service system. Any Liberian that wants the job can apply for it. But don't just get a job. You say, well, my son is the most qualified. Let my son have that job. And when your son commits a crime, there is that conflict there. You're not going to sit by and see your son be investigated like we see with Mr. Trump here, writing a letter for his son or helping his son to write a letter. That it becomes a conflict.
Right.
It becomes a conflict.
Conflict of interest, nepotism, and all these are forms of corruption. Stephanie, we have more questions there?
No, we don't. Not at this time.
All right. And if this is a lively discussion, I want to say if you are watching us from any parts of the world, please don't hesitate to call in or post your comments on Facebook. At this time, we'll go back to our guests to give their final words on this topic. We'll start with you, Mr. Sungbeh.
Oh, this is a great topic, and I'm so glad to be on this panel with our dear friend and sister, Mrs. Dolo. I think her contribution here is worthy of the effort. She came and explained everything. She did play her role as an educator to educate some of us about what she's doing in Liberia there. So I want to thank her very much for that. And I want to thank you, Mr. Moderator, for inviting me here. And hopefully I can be invited here again to speak on other issues that will be healthy to our country, that will help our country out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before Mrs. Dolo come in, we have one more comment on Facebook.
Yes, we have a question here from Mr. Dave Ja. Can you speak to the issue involving Senator Milton TJ of Sinoe County? Please provide some clarity. Why has he not gone to court?
Well, I do not speak to the issue of prosecution because that's not my, I don't have oversight over that. I only talk about education and prevention matters, but if you have that much interest, I will ask you to send an email to the LACC and you go to the website www.lacc.gov.lr and you can send in your questions, and then the enforcement division that takes care of that will be able to address that. Thank you.
Let me pick it back on that shortly. So where is that case now? Or where is that issue? Because I know it came up before Mr. TJ ran and won as senator. So where is that case right now?
Well, you're still pushing me in the corner for a case.
All right.
Yeah, I don't speak to cases, but I think if you do your homework, I'm sure there was an indictment. So that means that in due course, Mr. TJ will go to court.
All right. At this time, I want to say thank you so much for coming. Mrs. Dolo, if you have any final words for our audience.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and the rest of your team. It was a pleasure being here today. And to those who are watching us on Facebook, wherever you are listening via radio, I want to renew the hope for Liberia. I know the situation may seem hopeless as time goes by, but I want to assure you that, like Mr. Singman said, what curbs corruption is systems, and those systems are being put in place, albeit slowly. So I encourage all of us, let's go and continuously fight against corruption. We need to be the change that we want to see. If each of us decide that we'll say no to corruption, there will be no corruption in Liberia. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
And thank you so much for coming. Thank you for our audience watching by Facebook or on the internet. And if you're listening to us, wherever you are, we want to say thank you very much. Until next time, this is Focus on Liberia. I'm your host, Dennis Jah. Thank you so much for coming. And God bless
Thank
you.
you. God bless
Mr.
you.
Sungbeh, thank you. And we will have you back.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.